this seminar in our CTPSR seminar series. And the title of this seminar is From Exit to Voice, Reflections on Exile through the Accounts of Turkey's Intelligentsia. We're absolutely delighted to welcome Dr. Ahmet Erdi Öztürk today, Erdi, to his friends, who has been a Marie Curie Fellow with us at the Coventry for the last couple of years. However, it hit at the same time as pandemic when you were accepted. So we're really delighted to welcome you today to talk a little bit more about your findings. But just to introduce you, so you've now finished the Marie Curie Fellowship just in the past week, right? And you've returned to your full-time role as Associate Professor of Politics and International Relations at London Metropolitan University. You're also an associate researcher at the Institut Français d'études anatoliennes, I think I mispronounced that, and the non-resident scholar at Eliamat's Turkey program, and that's in Greece, right, isn't it? As well. So he's a very prolific author. It seems that you're publishing something every week. So we're really delighted to hear more about that as well. So I think 30 peer-reviewed journal articles already. That's fantastic. So Erdi is going to talk for about 20-25 minutes, and then we're going to move on to Dr. Stephen McLaughlin, who is an assistant professor here at CTPSR as well. So thanks to Stephen for agreeing to do that. Stephen, his work is on prevention of mass atrocities and peace education, and he's got an emerging research interest in Turkey. So thanks to that, Stephen. But I think that's enough from me now. So I'm going to hand over to Erdi. The floor is yours. Look forward to hearing what you have to say. Thanks, Erdi.
Many thanks, Catherine, for this lovely presentation. And also, I would like to thank every single member of CTPSR who has been hosting me. And it was a great 2 years for me in the CTPSR. And Catherine, I would like to thank you personally as being a great supervisor within these 2 years, particularly after mostly last 8 months. It was very good to work with you. Actually, this is a big title, New Turkey's Diasporic Consolidation, Exile, Conflict and Cooperation. It's a little bit different than the title that I gave you, because then I realized that only focusing to the intelligentsia will not give you the full picture. That's why I would like to talk more about the full project, actually. This project is basically about the Turkey's migration, the new wave of migration after 2013, and focusing particularly about who migrated to Germany and to the UK. But before that, I would like to give some historical background about Turkey's diaspora adventure, Turkey's migration adventures. Even though in every single week we have been seeing that the new wave of migration from Turkey has been a huge, crowded, diverse, multi-layered, so on and so forth. This is not the first migration wave from Turkey to Europe. Actually, Turkey's migration journey is quite historical, and it has a rich past. It has started in 1960s with the guest workers. As most of you know, after the Second World War, particularly the continental Europe needs, quote unquote, I'm saying that, cheap workers, and Turkey supplied that workers in particularly for Germany, for Austria, for Sweden, for France, for Netherlands. And after this was the first wave, actually, from who migrated from Turkey to the Western countries. The second wave, what we realized that between 1970s and 1980s, in every single 10 years, Turkish political history has been passing another critical junction, and these years was very problematic years for Turkey's domestic politics, because what we saw within these years, left and right-wing political parties street fights in Turkey. And within these street fights, what we saw that most of the left-wing and the right-wing young activists try to escape Turkey because to save their lives, actually. So this is the second wave. The third wave, as you know, starting from the 1990s, actually starting from the mid-1980s, there was the civil war, mostly focusing on the Turkey's Southeast region. And within this conflict between Kurds and the Turks, we saw many Kurds trying to escape Turkey for many different reasons. And this is the third wave. And now we have been focusing the fourth wave, which has been started after 2013. This is the last wave. And why this last wave is important? I mean, this last wave is important because when we compare the previous three waves, as you can see that the first one was the guest workers, the second one, left and right-wing political activists, the third one is mostly Kurds. But this wave is this new wave is quite diverse, and this diversity came from the Turkey's domestic political structure. I mean, as you know, since 2002, Turkey has been running from a single party government from one particular leader, which is called Recep Tayyip Erdogan's Justice and Development Party. Even though on paper, Justice and Development Party is a single party government, but we saw that Recep Tayyip Erdogan is very capable to establish different kind of unconventional and informal coalitions. In this regard, he started his wave in 2002 with a coalition with the liberals, with the pro-EU public intellectuals of Turkey, because he argued that he would be the symbol of how Islam can be compatible with the modern democracy. After 9/11, when the Islamic movements seen as a dark face of the world political scene, AKP says that we are the liberal version of Islam, and we are very market friendly. We are very democracy friendly political party. And starting from 2002, and I would say that to roughly 2011, AKP put a very pro-EU agenda, and this was the glorious years of Turkey in terms of economy, in terms of human rights, in terms of freedom of speech, so on and so forth. But after 2011, because of many different reasons, I mean, the economy is one of the reasons. The other reason is the political competition within the domestic politics is another reason. AKP actually, and Erdogan started to be a little bit of an authoritarian. I would say that a little bit after 2011. With this authoritarian transformation, with this authoritarian turn, what we saw that, first of all, AKP started to cut its ties with liberals, cut its ties with the pro-EU public intellectuals. But at the same time, after 2013, AKP started to cut its tie with another coalition partner, namely Gülen movement. What is Gülen movement? I think this is important for my research. Gülen movement is a parapolitical Islamic organization. On the one side, I think Gülen movement has two sides. On the one side of the coin, it is a philanthropic, service-oriented, education-oriented global movement. It has been opening schools, business associations all around the world, and their main motto is to establish a dialogue between different faith groups, between different figures. But on the other hand, the AKP is the Gülen movement is also a very parapolitical structure. What I'm saying, that parapolitical structure, they've been always interested in politics, and they would like to be within the power corridors of Turkey, such as the bureaucracy, such as in judiciary, such as in military. And these two powerful groups, AKP and the Gülen movement, has started the conflict after 2013. On paper, they said their conflict is based on ideology, based on principles, but in the reality, it's totally an interest-based conflict. But within this conflict, AKP has become a much more authoritarian to exterminate the movements. And with this transformation, with this authoritarianism, what we saw that the Gezi protests in 2013, it's a large protests against the AKP regime, separated around 78 cities in Turkey. And then what we saw that the collapse of the peace process between PKK and the Turkish state, and then the AKP's harsh attacks to the Kurdish region in Turkey. And then what we saw that the academics for peace declaration, it is a declaration that has been signed more than 1,000 academics. academics against the AKP's harsh policies, Kurds, and then what we saw at the end of the day, the coup attempt, the 15th of July 2016, bloody coup attempt. According to the AKP, it has been organized by the Gülen movement and other traitors. But after the coup attempt, Erdogan transformed the system from like a very broken parliamentary democracy to a Alaturka presidential system. And with this Alaturka presidential system, Erdogan is make himself as the only decision maker for every single steps of the policy processes in economy, in different areas. So this makes Turkey a kind of a competitive authoritarian system, and with this authoritarianism, many people trying to escape from Turkey with different waves. As you can see, I mean, from this critical junctions of Turkey over the last 2 decades, every single critical junction has targeted some different groups. For example, the collapse of the peace process targeted the Kurds. The AKP-Gülen conflict targeted the Gülen members of the Gülen movement. Academics for Peace Declaration has targeted the intellectuals. So this diversity has created a kind of a reflection in the diversity level of the new Turkeys, new migrants in Europe. So, and this created then a kind of an exodus. Why this subject is important? I mean, there's been many different authoritarianism, and with this authoritarianism, many individuals from different countries has been escaping their countries. But Turkey, in terms of geography, in terms of population, it is quite important. For example, in 2020, the trend continued. The migration trend continued, and Turkey was ranked the 5th among the list of the countries with the highest number of asylum seekers field in Europe. And the other thing is that, when we are looking for these asylum seekers, the structure of these asylum seekers are quite important. They're not like the asylum seekers who are coming some countries suffering with the civil war. We talked with Steven before the section. There is highly skilled people trying to ask for an asylum. For example, nurses, doctors, engineers, academics, people who has been working in an IT sector. So this is quite significant to see that these asylum seekers are not only lower class, lower educated, poor, quote unquote, people. They are mostly coming from middle class, well-educated families, and they've been asking asylums because they can't feel any hope within Turkey. So I think this is why this subject is important. The other important thing is that current statistics show that under this very dark political atmosphere in Turkey, not only one group, but also many different groups are trying to migrate from Turkey. For example, can you easily argue that Turkey has been running by an Islamist government, therefore secular Turks, Kurds, or Alevis are migrating Turkey? Yes, this is true, but they're not only the group they've been trying to migrate from Turkey, but also Islamists, Muslims, devoted religious individuals are also trying to migrate from Turkey. So this is the another importance of this subject. So, and also the other important thing is that the roads. When I compare the different roads with the first 3 wave of migration, within this new wave of migration, within this 4th wave, I observed different escape routes. The first one is that illegal border crossing. As you know, between Bulgaria and Greece, there's one river. Between Bulgaria, Greece, and Turkey, there's one river, and people are trying to escape illegally while passing the river. This is also very dangerous, but at the same time, this is quite new for Turkey's migrants. The other thing is that using the Balkans, because between Turkey and the 11 Balkan countries, there is a visa agreement. You don't need a visa to enter these countries. But these countries, such as North Macedonia, such as Kosovo, such as Serbia, they welcome Turks quite easily, but they don't have enough resources to support Turkish migrants. Therefore, Turkish migrants has been establishing different kind of businesses with only for £1,000, and with this £1,000 business they can apply for residence permit card for these Balkan countries, and with this residence permit card they can easily travel to the European countries, Western European countries, and then they apply for asylum. This is I call that it's a springboard countries. They've been using these Balkan countries to jump to the Western heavens. The other thing is that student visas. Most of the people who are, mid-30s, sometimes early 40s, trying to get master acceptances from Germany, from France, where the higher education is free, and they can get a student visa. And with this student visa, after the end of their master program, they try to find jobs and they try to change their visa types, but otherwise they ask for asylum. The other thing is that golden visa, mostly upper middle class or upper class individuals are been doing that. They've been buying some houses in Malta, in Portugal, in Spain, and asks for golden visas in these countries. This last one, no visa countries in the global south, is the newest thing that I found in the literature, because mostly, not mostly actually, in all the different ways before this last wave, the migrants have been trying to go to the West. But this time, not only West, they also try to go to the global south, Pakistan, South Africa, Philippines, even Japan. They're trying to go to the Japan and they try to establish a new life in here, not only West. So these roads also make this new wave quite interesting. This is the basement of the research. And within this 2 years, thanks to the generous funds of the European Union, I did a quantitative survey, not only in Germany, but also in France, Sweden, not only in Germany and the United Kingdom, but also in France, Sweden, and the Netherlands. And thanks to the Zoom and online interview opportunities, I conducted 250 convincing sample interviews for this research. But also, I conducted 55 semi-structured interviews with the intellectuals, with the intelligentsia, because what I realized that, when I was a BA student, I was reading a newspaper called Radikal 2. This Radikal 2 in Turkish, every single intellectual has been writing, like mostly liberal intellectuals, liberal left-wing intellectuals has been writing like commentaries and op-eds. Then I realized that most of them are not in Turkey right now. They've been living in Germany, they've been living in Sweden, in France, some of them are in the UK. And I would like to take an additional interview with these intellectuals, because as an ordinary people, migrating is something different, but as a celebrity figure, migrating is to migrate from your country is something different. And the first two results will be published around 1.5 years later. Now it's in the manuscript, is in the writing process, but the last part, we wrote a book with Bahar Bashar from Durham University, and it will be published at the end of this year from Edinburgh University Press, because what we realized that the experiences of the intellectuals, the experiences of the elites is quite different to compare the ordinary people. So within this data, I'll show you who are these migrants. First of all, these migrants are the migrants. They don't have any trust to the Turkish institutions. For example, they don't have any trust to the Presidency of Religious Affairs, the government, the president, the parliament, so on and so forth. They only trust, but not that much, civil society organizations, social media, and universities. They don't have any trust to the solid, quote unquote, solid, old traditional state institutions. The other thing is that we might think that all of these migrants in my data came from the opposition parties or came from the left-wing or social democratic parties or pro-Kurdish parties. No, there are some migrants who have been trying to escape from Turkey who voted to the Justice and Development Party or who voted to the Nationalist Action Party, which has been supporting AKP very highly. The other thing is that, I mean, for these migrants, religiosity is not very important, but at the same time, what we saw that there are some numbers, like scientifically significant numbers, such as 29% of from my data say that the religious is important. 7% says that religion is very important. So this doesn't mean that even though like the Turkey has been running from a pro-religious, pro-Islamist political party, no, but at the same time, religious people are trying to escape from Turkey. The other thing is that even though the Turkey's first wave of migration has been starting as a guest workers, this fourth wave, as we told, as I said at the very beginning of the presentation, coming from a very high level of an educational background. I mean, also what is important, these individuals do not get any support, that much support, from diaspora organizations, Turkey-originated diaspora organizations, because Turkey has been many different transnational state apparatus. They've been mostly funded to support Turkish diaspora all around the world, but this new wave do not want to get any kind of a proper support from that diaspora organizations. And the other thing is that, I mean, when I compare their last vote and their return ideas, what I saw that generally, now you will see some quotes, no one wants to turn back to Turkey because what they believe, what I saw from the interviews, okay, currently Turkey's situation in terms of political, in terms of social, in terms of economy is not very good, but maybe in 5 years it will be better, it will be a better Turkey. But they lost their hope to the society and they believe that, yes, now there is an Erdogan period, maybe there will be a transition and reformation period over the next 10 years. But after that, there will be a new guy will come to that society, and the same thing will happen in Turkish society because they don't have any single hope for a permanent reformation, permanent restoration for a country. So I think this is also an important issue. This means that these new migrants will stay in Europe, and these new migrants will be an quote-unquote issue for the European countries. So I would like to say a couple of interview narratives. The first thing is that people migrated from Turkey because of their security reasons. I mean, in 2015, there will be many different terrorist attacks in different parts of the country. Two of them is quite important, in Suruç and in Ankara. People say that my heart was broken into pieces because they don't feel very secure, and they believe that these attacks, I mean, state has some hand within these attacks. The other thing is that the polarization, which is important. I mean, likewise, every single authoritarian leader, Erdogan is also trying to establish or consolidate his supporters via polarizing the society. People do not want to live in a polarized society. The other thing is that economy. I mean, when I started this research, most probably £1 was 8 Turkish liras. Right now, £1 is 23 Turkish liras. So I think I need to find another English word to define Turkish economy right now, but I'm always defining it's a shrinking economy. But I think it is beyond the limits of the shrinking conditions. I mean, it is horrifying right now. The other thing is that I felt for my life everywhere I go. I fear for my life everywhere I go. I mean, as I said, human insecurity and conflict. As you know, 6 days ago, an horrifying earthquake happened in the southeast part of Turkey, and we realized that Turkey has been acting as a failed state. There is no security in a daily life or in the crisis. So this is also quite important. The other thing is that even though Turkish people trying to migrate from Turkey to the European countries, they say that we want to migrate because we don't feel purely secure in Turkey due to the Syrian migrants. This seems a little bit of a oxymoronic explanation, but during my interviews, I heard lots of comments like that because of the Syrian migrants, because of the Afghan migrants, because of the Muslim migrants from some Arabic countries. We don't recognize our country anymore. This is the other thing. The other thing is that as an Islamic government, starting from the educational system, also within the life sphere, AKP trying to not Islamize the society, but putting the Islamic symbols in every single corner of the society. So Islamization of the Turkish state and society has been like disturbing people a lot. The other thing is that likewise, every authoritarian system, Turkey has been running in a very neo-patrimonial methodology. If you are close to the power groups, this means that you can reach many things. But if you don't have any connections with the ruling party or with some of the Islamic communities, you don't have any chance within the bureaucracy or even within the private sector. So people are fed up from nepotism and they don't have any hope for the future. This is the general interview notes. And some of the interview notes from the public figures. I have some interview notes. For example, Barbaros Şansal, a fashion designer and activist. I mean, he's a world-leading fashion designer, and in my interview, he said that Turkish society do not deserve his works. The other one is that Engin Sustam. He's a Kurdish scholar who migrated from Turkey to France after the Academics for Peace. He said that he's an intellectual and he didn't express his ideas in Turkey freely. The other interview quote from Can Dündar, a very famous journalist and a documentarian, and he said that even though he's outside Turkey, he can't feel very free because he wants to do something for Turkey. But at the same time, he underlined that he realized that every invitation coming from the Western countries to him is just to talk about Erdogan and not glorifying Turkey. Erdogan's blushing. So he said that what happened after Erdogan? What will happen to my situation after Erdogan within this foreign country? The other one is Hayko Bağdat, a very famous Armenian writer and journalist. He said that, I mean, he needs some protection within this new host country because Turkish intelligence service, Turkish transnational state apparatus, or some pro-AKP members have been targeting him, targeting Hayko Bağdat, even in France, even in Germany. So he said that even though I escaped from Turkey, but Turkey is everywhere, I don't feel myself very secure. So this is another issue. This is another security problem for the streets of the European capitals. So this is the migration, like this is the migrant and the members of the diaspora perspective. What about the homeland perspective? Turkey is everywhere, as I said, and Turkey has been not leaving these creators, as I said, alone. First of all, Turkey has been dividing its diasporas as a good and bad diaspora. I mean, what does it mean? Good. If you are a pro-AKP member, you are a good diaspora. If you are criticizing AKP policies, you are a bad diaspora. This means that you can't get any proper service from the transnational state apparatus. The other thing is that even though Turkey has been trying to engage its diaspora members via supplying a full service, we will see an increase of the anti-Western, anti-Christian rhetoric within the discourse. The other thing is that transnational authoritarianism. We have been observing transnational authoritarianism from Russia, from Azerbaijan, from China, but Turkey has been a new member of this club right now. For example, passport confiscation, or the targeting some of the intellectuals, making them civil debt, or at the same time, using Interpol and Turkish intelligence service and running behind these intellectuals, or using some of the imams as a spy for this passport confiscation, so on and so forth, or organizing or creating some gangs or militant organization, particularly using the national outlook movement's youth groups and targeting the bad diaspora members all around the world. What about the diaspora spaces? For example, the Gülen movement members feeling hopeless, members of the Academics for Peace, they are still in struggle. They are still in resilience. They are still in survival mode. But Europe is not enough to feed the members of the academics. I mean, as the academics, we know that how the job market is very competitive and very, very hard. They couldn't find proper jobs, so they can't increase their voices because they need some fundamental needs to survive. So this is another problem. And also intellectuals and the members of the Gülen movement, they feel in exile. And because of Turkey's transnational repression activities, they feel insecure. Kurds, always they're a part of the imported conflicts because they are very organized. They are in a solidarity. So their solidarity has been observing from Turkey, and this created a kind of an important conflicts in the European countries. Hostland perspective. First of all, I mean, because of the increasing number of the migrants, Erdogan has been trying to transnationalize its domestic politics and trying to organize some rallies all around Europe. This is another problem. The other thing is that, I mean, it has been more than 10 years, and these new Turkeys, new migrants wants to be a citizen in their new host countries. This is another problem about dual citizenship, and this create the new discussions in Europe, in Germany, in Austria, and in France. The other thing is that Turkey has been serving in Europe with many transnational state apparatus, and the biggest one, the giant one, is Diyanet, presence of religious affairs. What is the main duty of Diyanet? I mean, the main duty of Diyanet is sending imams, running the mosques in the European countries, and serving to the Muslims, not only Turkish Muslims, but all around the world. But spying imams, I mean, these imams, when they push their boundaries, European leaders react against them. For example, Macron argued that we don't need the Turkish imams anymore. We would like to establish a French type of Islam. I'm really wondering that how he can do that, but this is another discussion. The other thing is that, as you know, there's been an increasing right-wing political movements all around Europe. And this increasing number of the Turkish migrants has been establishing a basement for this right political actors' statements. Turks out. So this has been creating another kind of a populist, racist discourse. So as a conclusion, I mean, as you can realize that this is a large, giant project, and this is not over yet, because in every single day we have been observing new people from Turkey trying to escape Turkey, and Europe is not very capable to welcome everyone. So this project is over, my project, but I think the issue is not over, and this will be a new issue for the streets of Europe in the near future. I know I talked a lot. Now let me stop in here, and I'm very much welcome your comments, questions, and remarks, because I know there have been many great points, and I hope I can clarify some of them during the Q&A session.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Erdi. That was absolutely fascinating. I really enjoyed hearing that from you. And that's quite a topic as well, when you're part of a diaspora of this kind as well. Must be quite something. Congratulations on amazing research and the forthcoming book as well. Stephen, I'm going to invite you on the screen, please, if you would care to join us. So for those of you who don't know Stephen, Stephen is a coordinator of these webinar series, as well as being a fantastic scholar in CTPSR. So Stephen, you have very kindly offered to give a response, a discussant role in this webinar, and pose some of your own questions to Erdi to kick us off for the discussion. So I'll come to you for a few minutes, come back to Erdi for a quick response, then open it up to everybody else for Q&A. Over to you, Stephen. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine, and thanks, Erdi. Thanks so much for an excellent presentation. And there's so much in it, and I could go in so many different directions and down a lot of different tangents, exploring a lot of the things that you've discovered in your research and that you've been talking about. And so I'm going to try to limit it just to a couple of areas, but I mostly have questions for you. I have a lot of questions, and before I go on to that, I guess I could say that I'm framing what I say with a sort of a personal connection to Turkey. I lived there as a young man for about 6 years, and I was an English teacher, and I spent a couple of years teaching in a private university in Ankara, a university that was quite diverse in the staff, the academic staff that was there. One of the things that I'm also noticing going back to Turkey over the years is how not only that Turkish intellectuals are leaving Turkey, but non-Turkish intellectuals are no longer going to Turkey as a place to work and to live. And so I think that's a tragedy on both sides. And there's a loss of diversity, not only from losing great academics from Turkey, but also losing that diversity within academic institutions. I left Turkey during, you could say, the honeymoon period of the AKP government. So I left in early 2004, around the time that the AKP government was moving closer to Europe and aligning itself with human rights norms and whatnot. So I was very optimistic when I left Turkey. And it took me some years, well, it took me a long time to actually really fully grasp the direction that Turkey was going in. And then going back over the years, I could say the last 6 or 7 years, it's been really palpable noticing the change in the country, particularly in Istanbul, the change of atmosphere, a kind of change in the sort of the dynamism of a city that was characterized by so much culture, so many art galleries, so many, so much great music and whatnot. And that seems to have changed itself. There's migrations going on within Turkey as well. People are sort of migrating to little pockets of refuges where things are maybe a little safer there. So it's really interesting hearing, I guess, talking about the international diaspora, and also thinking about sort of the changing of demographics and migration within the country as well. I think it's really significant to point out I guess the long historical nature of migration, going back to the 1960s with the guest workers, and then looking at those subsequent waves of migration, the ones that were generated by push factors, I guess. There seems to be an interesting pattern emerging, and that is I guess you can understand the nature of any one regime at any given time by looking at who's trying to escape, who's trying to leave. And so in the 1970s, as you mentioned, there was the conflict between right and left and the violence associated with that. And you had an exodus of correct me if I'm wrong, but predominantly left-wing activists in the 1970s. And then in the 1970s and 80s during the military coup, then in the 1990s, you had an exodus of Kurds during the conflict in the southeast. In this most recent wave, you've got everybody. So what does that say about the regime that everybody is trying to leave the country now? That's an interesting reflection on what's happening in Turkey, an interesting and quite a tragic reflection of what's happening, only going to be compounded by the tragedy of the earthquake last week, which Erdi stated really sort of brings sharp relief to the fact that so much has failed in Turkey. And and within all of that, I've just got so many questions that I want to ask, and I want to try to limit them to 4 or 5 if I can. So first of all, I'm wondering if you could talk about maybe the tensions between different diaspora groups, particularly if you look at that first wave of guest workers who make up, in countries like Germany and Austria and other countries within Europe, predominantly sort of dominate, I guess, the Turkish populations in those countries. And what kind of relations or tensions exist between this recent wave? Because I know that the guest workers and the descendants of guest workers are a group of the diaspora that Erdogan frequently courts when it comes to elections, and there seems to be a strong AKP following amongst many of them, whereas the most recent wave is predominantly anti-government. And so, is it possible to talk about the tensions a little more between these different diaspora groups? But not only that, do you see differences in across different countries in terms of the diaspora groups? For example, how is it different in the UK as compared to Germany? And that one difference notwithstanding. Another question: could you maybe talk a little bit more about possible tensions because this most recent wave of migration is far more diverse than before? Are there any tensions between different groups? And could you talk about maybe the mistrust or tensions perhaps between Gülenists and secular Turks who are leaving Turkey? And finally, given that this most recent diaspora, if we can, although it's very diverse, if we could characterize it in any particular way, you could say it's a diaspora of the educated. Most people are highly educated. And so I'm wondering if you could maybe give us your thoughts a little bit on those who are less educated and why it is that we don't see the same numbers of people leaving who are less educated. People with lower levels of education in Turkey, are they more likely to be in support of AKP? Or is it because the capacity to migrate is lower than it is for people who are educated? I might leave my questions there, but thank you so much.
Great, thanks, Stephen. In the interest of time, Erdi, if you could maybe give a quick response. They're great questions and they're really big questions. So thank you very much, Stephen.
I'm going to combine the questions and I'll answer them. First of all, I mean, why everybody has been trying to escape from Turkey? I mean, the diversity, I think this is a big question because, I mean, as you know, Agamben has a term like exceptional situations and exceptional leadership. I mean, while he's describing the authoritarian leaders, Erdogan has been following the pathways of this theory. In every single critical junction, he needed and still he needs an enemy. And he makes every single different political group make his enemy. Kurds are enemy, Gülenists are enemy, secularists are enemy, liberals are enemy. This is why Erdogan is one of the most experienced political leader in the world history right now. He is 69 years old, and if you don't consider Joe Biden's age, Erdogan is in the politics when he was 12. So this means that more than a half century. He has been in every single corner of the politics, in every single level of the politics. He knows the politics very well. So if you are an enemy of Erdogan, you can't stay as a wounded situation. You're gonna die. So in these circumstances, he makes everyone enemy. So this is why the diversity. The tension, I mean, this is a great question because I observed three different levels of tensions. The first one is that old diasporas and new diasporas, because the new diaspora is educated, coming from a different social class. They look very pejoratively for this old worker diasporas. And this old diaspora said that, I mean, we suffered a lot within this country and we have been in Germany more than three decades, maybe. I mean, who are you telling us what we should do? So this is the first tension. The second tension is, I mean, good and bad diaspora tension. Pro-AKP, I mean, anti-AKP. This is another tension. But the most complicated tension is within the anti-AKP group, because anti-AKP group doesn't mean that they are a unified one-body group. For example, lefts or Kurds hate from Gülen movement because they accused they accused the Gülen movement within this authoritarian transformation. For example, left-wing Kurds hates liberal because they said you supported AKP at the very beginning of their journey. So there's a different level of conflict. So there is no solidarity among the groups. This is the short answer. Different countries, absolutely. I mean, I've observed like significant differences between Germany and the UK, for example. Germany welcomed, tried to welcome everybody. who is eligible to come to migrate, from Gülen movement members, the Gülenists, like the leftist Kurds, so on and so forth. But the UK act very cleverly / pragmatically, invited or accepted only rich migrants. So this means that, I mean, the conflict within the streets of London is not that huge like we've been observing in Berlin. So this is the differences. But at the same time, you know, you mentioned about these push and pull factors. One of the significant pull factors is the networks. In the UK, I mean, what does it mean being a Turk? It's not very significant. I mean, the Turks means kebab shop owners or something like that. But in Germany, pretty much like 3.5 million Turks. Turks means something for Germany. In Sweden, I mean, Sweden is an 8 million country, and I mean, 500,000 Turks has been living in, like, Turks and Kurds from, like, migrants from Turkey living in here. This Turkey-originated migrants means something, but in the UK, it is not very significant topic. And this is the importance between these, I mean, the continental European countries and the UK. So I think they're brief enough.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Fantastically articulated responses there, Erdi, and really good responses. It's absolutely fascinating, the difference between the different countries and the level of visibility of a different population. You're right.